All right, so welcome to episode 3 of the How Are You series. So for today's episode, we're talking about the locus of control, and that's something that I've had a very unique experience today with just the things that I control, and I think it's really important that I just share this experience not only for the sake of topic of conversation, but also for just a lesson to myself and a lesson to maybe other people um, that I just personally experienced. And it taught me a lot just through today. Um, but without further ado, today I lost my CRT and my computer BSOD'd again, like 5 times on a driver, and I've been trying to like frantically fix it. Uh, for the past several hours. Um, but the reason I wanted to talk about this topic today is because I felt like a lot of the 2 prior episodes that I had really dealt with like relying on other people, but like in a lot of what we do in everyday life is just in our own control, in our own locus of control of what we can do in our lives, whether it's daily or, um, you know, in totality. Regardless, it's the what do we have that we can control. So when something in many cases there are things that I can, and by myself I also mean like for your life as well, that we have control over certain things that can or cannot happen. But in other cases, in the case of my CRT, my TV that I've been using to do speedrunning and stuff with, I couldn't plan for that to just break. But when it does break, when we do have experience loss in life, whether it's a person or a thing that we have a lot of emotional or spiritual or social attachment to, that's when it's super difficult. It's very difficult to experience that, and then experience it, not only like in life, but just mentally and emotionally to deal with a loss. And in this case, even though I guess you can argue that it was a very minor loss, it's still important to me. And the funny thing is, earlier today I had this topic of conversation in mind, but I it wasn't until like I realized that my CRT was just completely broken and there's nothing I could do, that like I had to make this video today, because it's important that, even though I always say that we should seek, support networks, and I think it's always important to try to establish a network of support to guide you throughout life and to help provide you with the needs that you have and I have, to feel happy and to feel accomplished and to feel wanted and needed in society. But for this specific example, it's a matter of how do I interpret a loss, or how do I interpret something that happens that's completely out of my control or within my control, and how do I prepare myself for those differences, like when something does happen that I can control, or when something happens that I can't control and there's nothing I can do about it. So how do I respond? And today my course of action was my CRT broke. So I knew that from now on, at least for Ratchet 2 and for, maybe Paper Mario in the future, I can't play on a lagless monitor unless I make a shitload of money, like soon. But I thought about my locus of control. I thought about like what can I actually influence now? And my current influence is that I'm lacking the monitor that I need to run these games at the most efficient level. But that doesn't necessarily mean that life is over for me, or I'm done, or I need to make this money, or I need to have this. Like it was a matter of time. And for me, and obviously everyone copes and deals with loss differently depending on whether it's a relative, a person that you hold dear and near to you, or it's a thing that you are very attached to. So it still is very important. So it's not to be discounted so easily just because it's a thing as opposed to a person, because it can still influence and impact your life on the daily. So for me, my immediate reaction was, why is this happening to me? Right? Like, this is bullshit. Like, I've taken good care of this thing. This shouldn't be happening. All those thoughts entered my brain immediately. But I thought about how do I want to deal with this? How do I want to take responsibility for something that's completely out of my control right now? And for me, it was just to sulk, but also to understand that it's a thing. It's, in this case, in this specific incident, in this everyday life situation, because as we're entering episode 3, I don't want to leave that realm quite yet of everyday life, because it really does just boil down to what happens on a daily basis. And this was just a daily thing. And it can happen to anyone, just whether it's a person or a thing. And interpreting that type of loss on that basis is very unique to the individual. But the reason that this episode is still necessary is to share how we experience our own losses and our own gains, because there's two sides of the coin. But just for this example, I'm just going to focus on how to perceive a negative. So this in this case, it's a negative. And for me, it was to just be upset, to allow myself to be upset, but to set a goal immediately early that I was going to be able to acknowledge that it's bad, acknowledge that it's shitty, acknowledge that I don't like it, but also understand that this incident is out of my control. There's nothing I can do about it. It's broken. I fixed it. I tried, I opened up the CRT. I played with some wires, I played with the circuit board, like the main circuit board that controlled the inputs and such. But even after doing those things for an hour or 2 hours, all that time that I spent into it, by the way, Safi, I see you there, man, what's up? And despite all that, it still didn't end up working. And it almost felt like it was such an emotional attachment to that I was really trying to control the outcome, but I couldn't in the end. So that's why, I had to make a plan. My plan was that I was going to be upset. I was going to spend an hour or 2 hours just thinking about what just happened and processing it in my own unique way. But in doing so, I'm also creating a goal and a condition that even though this thing is shitty, and even though this thing is out of my control at that point of trying to fix it and solve it and resolve that problem, I have to move forward. We all have to move forward. And that's the theme for now, is that at the end of the day, for our everyday life, we have to look forward to the next day and how we're going to approach that. And do you really want to go into the next day feeling and experiencing that loss over and over again? Or do we want to move on and think about something that we can turn that's more in our control than a loss that's already foregone. It's completely foregone at this point. You know, like in my case, my CRT is gone. I've tried to repair it. I can't repair it. I can't afford to have it repaired. I can't afford to have it replaced. It's gone. So it took me a few hours. Like at this point, I seem very stable, but at that time, I felt like I needed to get in a place, in a position where I could process this. I could come up with a plan to recover, and it might take longer for other people too. Like it's not always going to be just like a few hours. And so for me, I was lucky enough that I was able to just get mental stability, but always take that time is what I would suggest from this episode, is that because we're talking about locus of control and we're talking about experience and perception of loss, regardless of thing, person, etc., we need to have that time and space where we can process, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And the most important thing is to make sure you surround yourself with a environment that will allow for that type of behavior in order to move forward, in order to move on. So in this case, that's what this episode is really about. As we come to our conclusion really quickly, I talk just on and on, but this is not just for you guys, it's also for me. But that's why I'm doing this, is because I want to encourage other people to express this type of, angst, this type of outlet for expression, for experiencing something that otherwise in normal everyday life we can't do that, like that, and it's not acceptable. So that's what this is meant to be. And I say that every episode. I will always say that, is that this is the space. This is the space for you to experience, profound feelings, emotions, sadness, happiness, etc. Like just the expression itself is what will allow us to continue to grow and to move. And that is what I want from this series to continue. Even though we're just talking about the things that we can or can't control, regardless of the topic, the main theme will always be the same. So that's like my closing remark for this situation. And I'd love to have anybody who watches this just share an experience. You don't have to, obviously. The amount of support this series has gotten is just ridiculous in my mind. Especially because it's not speedrunning content, so I don't expect to really, I'm not really fetching for reviews or anything like that. But if you do feel obligated to just, or encouraged, hopefully, to express those types of feelings in this topic of discussion for this week, think about the things that you can control in life. Think about the things that you don't have control over. How do we deal with them? How do you deal with them? I just spent the last 15 minutes almost talking about how I dealt with this situation that happened today. That might affect me for months and months or years to come. I don't know. But what would you do? How would you feel? Or what example do you have that I can't provide? Because that's what I want to bring to the table. It's just uniqueness, unique experience, unique thoughts, and that's what people like you can provide. So, this is much bigger than myself, and I want to thank everyone for just being a part of this process. You guys are absolutely wonderful. That's pretty much all I have to say for today. Sorry I talk so much. I know it's annoying. But you guys are fucking fantastic, and don't ever stop believing in people, man, because we all need each other and we can all use each other, and this is kind of what that's about. So love you very much, man, and I'll see you guys next week for another episode, another topic. I think I'm gonna keep sticking with the daily theme for now. But if you have other suggestions, please feel free, because I'm always open-minded to those types of things. So thank you guys. Thank you so much. All right, I'll cut it there. Um, yeah, I didn't expect too many people to watch this because it's very quick, rapid.